Hello, everybody. Spider here, the Fight Card Podcast, coming to you once again from San Antonio, Texas. Being joined by Juan Montalvo. Juan Montalvo, how are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Now, I brought you on here. Of course, you work, or actually, do you own or co-own Capital Fight Management?
I'm a partner.
Okay. And as far as when it comes to Capital Fight Management, who makes up the management company?
So there's me, and we have two other partners. We have a staff of recruiters as well.
Okay. And of course, where are you at right now?
Right now, I'm actually in my car outside of our office in Connecticut.
Okay. And I was going to ask, because I see you posting, you're all over the place, man. You're in New York. I mean, of course, you're traveling with these promotions. Is that the fun part of the job?
The whole job is fun. I mean, interacting with people, meeting promoters, meeting fighters, sponsors. It's a great job to have.
No, definitely. And let me ask you, what was it that brought you into the management company or business, should I say?
Oh, that's a funny story. So about 10 years ago, I had a friend who actually got a fight contract, and he said to me, "Hey, you've worked for some big companies. Can you look at this contract?" So I looked at his contract. I kind of started marking it up. I'm like, "No, you can't sign this." I'm like, "It's extortion. You can't do this." I'm like, make all these changes and send it back." So he was like, "Man, I need somebody to represent me. You should help me out." So kind of as a joke, I started helping him with his contracts and, representing him, unofficially representing him. And it got to the point where I'm like, wow, I should actually get licensed to do this. And I ended up getting licensed as both, a boxing and MMA manager, and started a business, merged with Capital Fight Management and my two partners. And, here we are.
No, and I gotta say, because I've been covering the sport for over 12 years here in Texas, and I've been able to view a few contracts from like Bellator, from UFC, and it was to the fighters because, of course, they were coming in with no management, so they were kind of like, "Hey, can you go over this?" And reading those contracts, I can say I had no idea what's going on, man. So I would tell them, like, "Man, you got to find somebody that knows what this means and what this means because it sounds a little iffy, But obviously, that's where you guys come in, right?"
True. I mean, the contracts are, in most cases, they're not worded to support the fighter. It's basically a business, and the promoter has to do what they have to do to make money. But on the other hand, it's the fighter's job to represent their best interest and get paid what they're worth. Right. So that's our job as a management company, is to represent the best interest of the fighter, not the best interest of the promoter.
Right. And let me ask you, when it comes to promotions, man, can you tell us some of the promotions you have worked with throughout the years?
So I've worked with Extreme Fight League. I've worked with BKFC. We've worked with Bellator. We've done work with UFC. There's a broad range of promotions. I've worked with a bunch of large ones and smaller ones, and for the most part, they're all good and they're all willing to work with you, and you just have to build a relationship with these guys.
No, and by all means, and I was gonna say, being that you guys work on the fighters' best interests, are you guys? And I was gonna ask that, do you guys butt head with the promoters when it comes to, or do you guys kind of have to give a little to take a little?
So sometimes, it's literally being a manager is fighting on the opposite end. It's like an attorney. You have to literally fight, and aggressively advocate for your clients. So yeah, sometimes it's not pretty. I mean, most of the time you try to be diplomatic and, it's a give and take relationship, but sometimes you really have to put your foot down. And I think, for guys that are out there, looking at fights or looking for a management company, to make sure you get somebody who's going to advocate for your best interest and not just roll over for a promotion.
No, and by all means, the same thing, because like I mentioned earlier, I've been doing this for years. And I mean, back then, I mean, I had fighters that were just kind of like taking fights, getting paid $100, getting paid $250, and this is no traveling, no hotel, nothing. And so basically they were fighting for free, man. And at that time they just wanted to fight, but it's not a smart way to do it, right?
I mean, in essence, what you're saying is, they're basically paying the promoter to fight.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, $200, that's not going to cover your gas, you know, yet alone your hotel, your gear, your food. I mean, it's a joke. You know, promoters make a lot of money. The larger promoters make a lot of money on these sites, and it's unreasonable to expect a fighter to go in there and not be adequately paid. You know, as the promoters are getting paid, they have to be willing to pay, you know, their fighters. That's how they make their money. Without the fighters, there's no promotion.
No, exactly. You see, and of course, the thing now, and that I've noticed throughout the years, a lot of promotions now, they have ticket sales where now the fighter has to sell tickets. And it doesn't happen with the larger promotions, of course, but what are your thoughts on something like that?
That is the bane of my existence. I will not allow my fighters to sell tickets. It is not their job. Their job is to put on a show and to train. That's their job, and I tell them that. Any fighter that, you know, that's forced into selling tickets, it's something I can't get behind. You know, I'll help a promotion, you know, sell tickets, but I'm not going to allow them to base that on my fighters' pay.
Right, right. No, yeah, and I mean, of course, there's a lot of give and take for that. I mean, especially here in Texas. I mean, there's one regional promotion that's on the UFC Fight Pass, let's say, and yeah, I mean, that's kind of their give and take because, of course, you know, they want the fighters with a following, and I personally get it. Okay, they got to put butts in the seats, but yeah, at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, well, if you're the promoter, you're the promotion, why aren't you promoting? And that's just my take, but who am I, right?
I mean, no, you're exactly right. I mean, they have the money. They're putting on the show. I mean, as you said, it's a give and take. You cannot expect the fighter to do everything.
Right, right.
The promoter, you know, you're right. They want to put butts in seats. Well, that sometimes it costs money. Advertise your fights. You know, the people will come.
No, you see, and that's one of the things about, once again, when I first started, the media outlet that I was working with at that time, we used to help the promotions. We used to tell them like, man, we'll interview the fighters, we'll do the recap, we'll do the fight, you know, just kind of do what we can just to kind of get the traffic going, and of course, to sell tickets, you know. And at that time, we weren't smart enough to kind of say, hey, let's, you know, give us a cut from the ticket sale. So we didn't do that. But it was just, I just felt as a media outlet like that was my job to go ahead and push the fighters, of course, but the promotions as well. But you're saying right now, when it comes to like BKFC, UFC, Bellator, are those? I mean, there's no ticket sales involved, but is the pay like can you give us like a ratio as far as like what you're willing to give or give or take when it comes to fighter pay?
So I mean, again, with promotions, it can depend. I mean, you have, you know, smaller promotions that'll pay you $500, which really is not worth it. And, you know, as you go up in the business, you know, with BKFC, Bellator, you know, those other guys, you can make, you know, an upwards of $20,000 plus per fight. So it's really a broad range, depending on the fighter's ability and skill, their mindset, how hard they're willing to work. You know, the sky is the limit. You know, just get aggressive representation.
No, definitely. One of the things I did notice years back, once again, I had a fight gear company I started. I started sponsoring fighters, and before I knew it, I had managers calling me like, "Hey, I got this fighter coming up," and I was kind of bewildered because I was like, "Man, I was still local, you know, I wasn't trying to get big." But one of the managers that did call me was for Vanderlei Silva, and I remember talking to the guy. He's telling me, "Yeah, you know, this is what we can do," and I says, "Man," I said, out of curiosity, I said, what do you do? And he says, "Oh, well, I'm a lawyer." And I was thinking, oh man, like, yeah, you kind of have to have like yourself, you know, somebody with that business um, background to actually be able to read something, make, you know, like you said, be aggressive when you have to, because you do have to fight for your clients, man. But when he told me that, it kind of opened my eyes to where I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, I can't, you know, I was thinking, oh, I could do this, and I couldn't. I mean, of course, it takes a background, right?
It does. I mean, you really have to know what you're doing. You know, me and one of my partners, we're licensed out in New York, which is a difficult state to get licensed in. Yes, you definitely need to know what you're doing. You need to be able to know how to read contracts, how to negotiate. There are so many people out there, and I can't stress this enough, that tell guys, oh, here, let me represent you. Let me represent you. And they're not fight managers. They're not licensed. They're not bonded. They're not insured. If you're not licensed, you are not a manager. You are not a management company. You need to be licensed by the State Athletic Commission.
Right.
And I cannot stress that enough, because there are so many people out there that say, yep, I'm a manager. And, oh, really? Where are you licensed? What state? And people just,
I think I lost you, buddy. There you go.
sorry. So that's very important.
No, I mean, definitely, because when it comes to contracts, like you said, I mean, there's been, and I'll throw this in there myself, but with King of the Cage, for example, I mean, there was fighters that the UFC wanted to get, but the promoter had them locked in contracts, man, and it sucks. But once again, you got to read your contract, because if you get locked in and it says on there that you can't go to another promotion, I mean, they lose out, right? I mean, those are the things that you look at.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a big thing with a lot of these promotions. They will lock you in for a 3, 4, 5 fight deal, and you can't fight with anyone but them.
You see, and what are your thoughts on something like that? I mean, is that good for business? Is that good for the sport?
So that's a good question, and it really does depend. If you're going to lock a fighter in, what are you going to do for them? How are you going to promote them? How are you going to market them? How much are you going to pay them, more importantly? Why should they obligate themselves to lock into your promotion for this amount of time? And those are the important questions that need to be asked. You, again, have some fighters who are, just becoming pro, and they're like, oh, this is great. This promotion wants to lock me in. Not necessarily great. Don't let a contract blind you and think it's the best thing. You have to be impartial and think about your best interests.
No, and that's true, because there's a lot of there's tons of fighters. I mean, they're popping up left and right. Myself, I knew a few that go pro, and I always tell them, like, you know what, man? I mean, because they have their coaches, they have their sponsors, but they don't have a management, and it helps, because the coach, of course, their job is to coach and get their fighters ready, and for them to actually start helping with the contracts and everything. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but when they get to that level, I mean, of course, they should start reaching out, right? I mean, to people like you guys.
Of course. And one of the other things that's funny that you're saying about coaches, I talk to fighters every day, and, they'll call me, they'll reach out, and they're like, okay, well, we can't retain you guys until I talk to my coach. My coach is getting my fights and dealing with your contracts. Well, your coach, unless he's a fight manager, he's not allowed to negotiate your contracts and, your fight. Your coach is there to coach you and train you, not to manage you. And that's another thing I cannot stress enough. I love coaches. It's their job to go out there and help train the fighters. It is not their job to manage the fighters and tell them, how to run their business.
And then let me ask you one more thing. When it comes to a fighter, when is the best time for a fighter to start reaching out for a management company?
Another excellent question. So I think it's when you feel you're ready to wind down on your amateur career and go pro. It's always good kind of at the beginning of your pro career to have a manager with you, so he can guide you through the ins and outs of what to do and what not to do. There's so many things a reputable management company can help you with. Your contract negotiation, your travel, your lodging, your food, per diems, sponsorships, marketing, public relations. Those are all things your management company should do. Like, we are a full service, all in one firm. The difference between us and a lot of guys, all we do is boxing, MMA, and bare knuckle. Those are the only 3 things that we specialize in. That's what we specialize in. We'll help fighters if they want to be in some other areas, but that's kind of what we do. So sorry, hopefully that answered your question.
No, it sure did, man, and I appreciate that because those are questions that I get. You know, I have my podcast here in San Antonio, and I've got local fighters and fighters abroad. You know, but those are some of the questions that I get from them as far as like, man, you know what, like I want to start getting bigger fights. I want to start getting more money, and it's just like, well, I mean, like you said, it depends on the fighter as far as where they are in their fight record. I mean, maybe not, but I mean, of course. The promoters, the higher the record, I mean, would that make sense for somebody that's like, say, 10-0 to get more money than somebody that's 5-5?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you have an amazing record like 10-0, you're going to be making very good money. Sponsors are going to love you. Promoters are going to be all over you. They're going to want you fighting everywhere. If you have a record, like you said, 5-5, yeah, they're going to want you, but you're not going to be as valuable to them as somebody with a 10-0 record, or a 5-0 record, or a 5-1 record. The better your record, the more marketable you are. And that doesn't mean you have a 5-5 record. You could easily be 10-5, 15-5. You have to work. I always tell my guys, their job is to train, get in the cage and fight. Our job is to do everything else.
Oh yeah, and I mean it does help because one of the things I get, backtracking to selling tickets, the fighters here is just like, man, I'm trying to cut weight, I'm hungry, I'm tired, and I'm having to sell these tickets, and I always tell them like, maybe find somebody that'll help you sell them so that you don't have to. That way they can concentrate on fighting. But that's got to be one of those things that, yeah, like you said, I mean, a fighter shouldn't be doing that. They're getting ready for this fight. Of course, a lot of them work full time. They have family, they have kids, and on top of that, they got to do this. So it's just another burden for them. But hopefully, the promotions will get better with that. Like I said, I mean, I'm all for helping the promotions getting their feedback, their traffic. One of the things I did want to ask was that you brought up was the fact that if they're going to get them in contract, what are they going to do for them? And I think that's something, personally, that's something that I wish more promotions would do, because they promote the guys that are, going up for the title but at the same time, they don't plug in the fighters' Instagram. They don't plug in the fighters' formats, plugs, and it's like, yeah, man. I mean, I think that's something that they should start doing if they're gonna lock them in like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of promoters basically, they push the big card, but they don't push their undercards, and their undercards are where the money is at. Those are the guys that are going to go out there and really work it.
No, for sure. One of the things I always say when I do a recap is I always look for the first fight of the night, and I always look for the first fight of the main card, because I'm like, those are the fights that set the pace, and those are the ones that are going to go out there trying to make some noise to get watched. That way they can get a bigger fight next time, man. So definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with you. I love going and watching the first fight. That makes the first fight is actually the most exciting fight.
No, definitely. Yeah, by all means. And let me ask you, a lot of talk within MMA is always like the women fighters compared to the men's. Does the pay differ, or is it always like back to whether or not their record's high, whether they have a following? I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah, so a lot of people won't admit it, but yeah, the pay sometimes for women is not fair. And again, it comes back into the aggressive advocating. If you have a female fighter and that female fighter, is a go-getter and has a good record, she deserves, equal pay. And, she needs to advocate for herself or have her management company advocate for her. Nobody should get in the cage and be fighting for pennies on the dollar, because at the end of the day, it's a dangerous sport. You can cause yourself injury, and you should be paid accordingly. Male or female, it shouldn't matter.
No, by all means. Now, I do appreciate you, man, once again, jumping on this. I did have a few questions. I want to bring you back and get a few more questions lined up for you, man, if you could help with that. But other than that, of course, they can look you guys up. I mean, Capital Fight Management. I mean, you guys are on Facebook. Is there a plug as far as where people can actually contact you guys? And I will put it on the video.
Sure. I'll text you my business card, and also they can go on our website, capitalfightmgt.com. You can look us up, Capital Fight Management, or on Facebook. One Montalvo. They could look me up on Facebook. But yeah, I'd love to come back anytime. It was a pleasure talking to you.
No, likewise, sir. I appreciate you, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Everybody out there, this is Thefightcardpodcast. Juan Montalvo once again. Till next time, follow up.